All right, welcome to the show, everyone. I'm your host. My name is Mark, and today on the show, I've got a good friend of mine, Paul C. How are you doing today, Paul?
I'm absolutely fine. Thank you very much.
You know what?
Pleasure to be with.
Pleasure to be
Pleasure
with
to
you.
be with you.
Pleasure to be with
Yeah.
you too. So, first off, Paul, I want to thank you for coming on the show again. And second, I want to thank you for the last time that we met, being up at your place and enjoying that beautiful view and your kindness, and
Thank you.
your hospitality. That meant a lot.
Thank you. I'm still trying to get the coffee stains out of the sofa, but other than that, it's okay.
No.
Joking. I'm joking.
So anyway, I don't have the recovery band with me right now. I'm just kidding. They're going to play for you, Paul. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Kick it, boys. All right, now we can officially start the show. So how's your Thursday going today?
It's going really well, actually. I'm very happy. I've been did a bit of work this morning, and I spent most of the day on the beach, and I'm back here with you. And then I'm going to do a yoga class, yoga and meditation at 6 o'clock on the beach. So to be very honest with you, life's treating me very well at my old age.
That's great. Now you're the second person this week that I've talked to in recovery that does yoga and meditation. What do you find that yoga and meditation does for you?
Well, it does nothing for me because I've never done it, yoga. Tonight is my first night, so I've got to be brutally honest. I've seen people do it,
All right.
and I've been here for 2 months and watching them every Thursday night on the beach. I thought, I've got to try it. It's a candlelit one or something. But anyway, a meditation I do meditation every day. I don't do long. I do 10, 15 minutes. I do it with the help of an app, and it's amazing. And it's taught me about breath, and it's taught me about how to bring myself back online when I'm, not having a great day, and I can completely come back, and I find it very, very good. So yeah,
that's incredible. Now you were talking about doing a chair tomorrow night, and so what's that going to look like for you?
Well, it's a funny one actually, because it's obviously I'm from United Kingdom, and it's down in one of the clubs in Miami Beach. And funnily enough, when I first came since I've been clean and sober almost 20 years, when I came over to Miami, when I was clean and sober, I used to go to this particular room every 2 or 3 times a week. And to be there tomorrow night and sit on the chair, the leather chair they talk about, I'm really looking forward to it. So, yeah, nice people too that I'm seeing tomorrow. And we're all doing a bit of fellowship afterwards and going for pizza, which is even nicer.
Oh, that's awesome. So let's talk about the fellowship a little bit. So you have a fellowship in the UK and you have a fellowship here. And what does that mean to you?
Well, I've got to be honest with you, since I've been in, I'm not saying I've been in the program, because I've actually been in and out of the program. I've been in this program solidly for almost 20 years. Mm-hmm. I haven't had a drink or a drug since January the 24th, 2004. Awesome. Or wanted to have one. I've been one of these lucky ones that, I've never got close to relapse. But in saying that, the 20 years previously, all I did was come in and out of the rooms and relapsing constantly. We'll come to that in a minute. But during many years of traveling in my job and everything else, I've been to meetings all over the world. I really have. I've been to meetings in China and Hong Kong and India. And I've even been to meetings in Barbados. I've been to meetings here and in various parts of Europe. So the great thing is, it doesn't matter where you go, the rooms all look a bit similar because there's a load of drunks and addicts in the rooms. So everybody, for many years I lived in Spain, so I went to meetings nearly every night when it was early recovery in the island of Mallorca in the middle of the Mediterranean. They've got great recovery there. They've got great recovery in mainland Spain. So wherever you go in the world, obviously it's different over here because you guys do things a little bit over the top, with the birthdays and everything. And
oh, really? So you're talking about like the medallions, the celebrant day?
Well, no, we do all that, but we don't dance along with it and do all that nonsense. And we don't. And when it's somebody's birthdays, we don't bother with it. Well, I think we bring in a cake, maybe, but we don't do all. We just don't. It's just different. But the actual meetings are identical. Identical.
Oh, wow.
There's no difference all over the world. No difference.
Yeah. So you've been to AA meetings all over the world, and so what do you find, like, when you go to a meeting in a new country? Like, is it hard to adapt to those, or is it the same message, or like, how does that work for you?
No, it's identical. It is absolutely identical. It's identical. You go in, everybody's welcoming, especially if you're just on holiday and visiting for a week or something. Everybody's welcoming. There's I don't know. There's such a brethren. There's such the fellowship. It's so important, and it is the same. I mean, the message is the same. Everybody, it really is. I mean, I did a speaker meeting the other night on Zoom that was in Inverness, which is the very north of Scotland. So it's right at the north of Scotland in the United Kingdom. Wow. And there was 100 people on that meeting, and it was a hybrid meeting. And the meeting was called Clear Cut Directions. So there was no messing around. There was nobody sharing about, maybe there's some meetings that I don't go to because it's all a wee bit too poor me. But I love a solution-based meeting. And I would find that most of the meetings I go to do seem to be solution-based, and everybody keeps very close to the big book.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing to stay close to the big book. When you came into the program of recovery, what did that look like for you? What brought you into the program of recovery?
Well, first time around or this time around?
Let's go with first, and then we'll hit the second.
So I started drinking and using in 1980. Now, at 1980, I was 30 years of age. So I didn't really have a drink or a drug until, I hope it's okay to talk about drugs.
Oh yeah, it is. Absolutely, it is.
But I didn't pick up drink or drug. I mean, I might have had an occasional glass of wine when you go out for dinner, but I didn't have any issue with alcohol. I didn't have any issue with drugs. There was lots of my friends smoking, marijuana and stuff like that in Glasgow, but I didn't know anything about drug users or anything like that. It wasn't my life. And then in 1980, I was in Las Vegas, of all places. I was 30 years of age with a group of friends. I might have mentioned it to you that my brother was Frank Sinatra's piano player. So we'd gone over to see my brother opening up with Frank Sinatra in Las Vegas in 1980. Wow. And we had a big celebration party afterwards. And I was drinking some champagne. The next thing I knew, I was a bit drunk. And I was taking cocaine, which I'd never taken in my life. And within 2 years of all of this going down, I'd lost my family, lost my home, lost my business, and was on my knees and went to a meeting in London, around the corner from where I lived. And I knew I was an addict and an alcoholic. And back in those days, I didn't know where to go. I went to an NA meeting at the time. I didn't warm to it. It was nothing to do with the blue book. I didn't know what color the book was. Obviously, I know now they've got a green book, but I didn't know then. But the people were just two heroin users, and of course, I was listening only to the differences and not the similarities at all. Uh-huh. So I didn't stay there very long. But then sooner than later, somebody got me into a CA meeting. Which is a hybrid of AA, but the good thing is it's exactly the same 12 steps, no difference. They follow everything in the Blue Book. Your teaching of the steps is in the Blue Book, and that's how my journey of recovery started. But and I went to regular meetings. I never got a sponsor. I never did the steps. And I spent 20 odd years listening to the differences and not the similarities.
Wow, so you were just dry.
Well, I wasn't even dry. I was like, I could go maybe for 30 days and then I'd be out. And I'd go another, couple of months and then I'd be out. It was very deceiving for me because I didn't realize that, this thing had a hold of me. I just didn't know. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get it. But with all the little sayings that we have in the rooms of AA,
yeah,
all of these little sayings, the two most important, the most important saying that saved my life, Mark, and I want you to be was very clear about this to anybody listening, and that is keep coming back. Because if it hadn't been for that warm message of keep coming back, I wouldn't have kept going back. Yeah. And it was the kept going back that I knew was my only chance. And until eventually, you know, my body, well, I'd had enough. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's when I took this program seriously. Yeah. So that was my story. So I was out there using between 1980 and 2004. So to the 23 years of mayhem. And in fact, funnily enough, you asked me about my chair tomorrow, my speaker chair tomorrow. I don't really talk too much about my I always start off by going problem. I had a problem. There is a solution. The solution is taking action, and action brings about change. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. Absolutely. So I totally got that this time. And so when I do a meeting, so it's problem, solution, action, change. I spend a few minutes talking about my problem. I don't really go into anything. I don't tell any stories. I know that a lot of people do tell examples of stories, but I tend to just sort of, you know, see what my consequences were that happened because of my drug and alcohol use. And it brought me to my knees. And then I kind of focus on, you know, getting into the program and how I got into the program and how I got a sponsor and how I, you know, worked the steps, et cetera, et cetera. So I talk about the solution and the action and where I am now. So that's kind of.
That's good, because I was told that to stay in the solution and try to not live in the problem. Like, we do not regret the past and wish to shut the door on it, but to stay in the solution.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's very important because, listen, you know, when I go to meetings, I listen to people, and that reminds me, I've got a story similar, and I keep it to myself. But I need to hear that. I need to hear other people actually sharing their stories when they talk about this particular night or this particular whatever. But because that's what, you know, I go to listen to. But you know, I mean. You know, I was celebrating 25 years of marriage the other day when you were here. And you know that you've met my sponsor, and you know that my life at 72 years of age is completely different to my life that it was when I was 52 years of age. Yeah. So I kind of just, you know, really talk about, you know, in the problem, you know, I had 23 years of just breaking people's hearts, family members, people I was in relationships with or married to, my parents. You know, I did all this stuff, you know, stole from my family, bankrupted myself 3 times, had 2 broken marriages. And, you know, I've got a daughter that I don't see anymore, that I haven't seen since she was 3. And, you know, I've got a lot of stuff that happened during my using and drinking. And that was my problem. And I know what my problem was. And but it's not, it's my life's different today. Yeah. You know?
So you talk about the first time around in the program and how you were kind of in, out. What changed everything this time around for you?
Well, my wife, my present wife, who's been with me 25 years now, she'd been with me at this point almost 5, and she was on her way out the door. But she was very good the way she did it, because she had, for the last 6 months before she was about to leave, she was showing indifference. So there was no argument. She just let me get on with it. I'd come home at 6 o'clock in the morning, and she was on her way to work, and it was just like that, you know, get the dogs fed and take them for a walk type of thing. So she was so indifferent. And then on New Year's Eve, 2003, 2004, we haven't even got to 23. In 2003, 2004, New Year's Eve, I'd been up for like 3 nights. I hadn't been to sleep, and we had friends over, and it was a disaster. And she asked everybody to leave, and I was just, you know, I was in a terrible state. And she said, if you don't do something about this and phone that guy Danny in New York to help you, because he offered to help you, then I'm off. I'm on out. So I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't like to say that I mean, I had a home. I had a relationship. I had a job. So I mean, trust me, I'd been on my knees many times.
Yeah.
I'd been on my knees many times. I'd been nearly homeless. I'd done all of that stuff before, but I'd managed to keep working and managed to keep earning money. But it was not a happy life for anybody around me.
Yeah.
And you know, and I've got a beautiful daughter now, but you know, I was picking her up, and it was wrong. Anyway, short story sideways. I phoned this guy Danny in New York, and really I was just trying to get my wife off my back. I'll be honest with you, Mark. I was trying. She knows this. I was trying to get her off my back. I wanted to get away from London and go to New York. She said. So I phoned him up, and I'm thinking, I know people in New York I can score from, I can drink with, girls I can party with. So I was sort of thinking, right, this isn't too bad to start the new year, 2004. So I phoned him up at 3:00 in the morning. I'd been up for 4 nights now. And about the 2nd of, I think it was the 2nd of January, 2004. And this guy answered the phone, and he said, are you prepared to go to, his name's Danny F., are you prepared to go to any lengths? And I went, yeah, I didn't know what any lengths were really. 3:00 in the morning after been up for 4 nights, but yeah, I'm certainly prepared to come to New York. He says, well, get on a plane and come to Oklahoma City. And I said, what? Oklahoma City? But you live in New York, you live in the Bronx. You told me that. That's part of your message, or part of your... He says, no, I moved 2 months ago to Oklahoma. Oh God, I've committed now. I don't know. And the only thing I knew about Oklahoma was the Rodgers and Hammerstein musical. I'll sing a bit. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. That's one of the songs. Anyway, ducks and geese and chicks better scurry. Well, anyway, I know all the songs, by the way, from Oklahoma, but I didn't know where it was, and it took me 27 hours to get there on January the 4th.
Wow, that is any length.
2004. And I drank all the way there. I had a 7-hour layover at, I had to go via Chicago in the middle of winter. It was freezing.
Yeah.
And then take another plane and wait for that plane. I don't know, 7 hours, 9 hours, don't know. But then I went down to Oklahoma. But it took me 27 hours. And then this guy met me off the plane with a yellow velour tracksuit. You've met him. You kind of know his background.
Yep.
And he was straight out of The Sopranos. And he was in the original Sopranos, beginning with M. And yeah. And I think you've done the podcast with him. I know you have, because you did it here. And you see, you know what he looks like. So you know he looks exactly like that. But he was obviously 20 years younger.
Wow.
And he took me to his home and took me straight to a meeting that night. And I'll be honest with you, I did everything with him. He took me right through to step 8. I didn't do 9 because I was there. And I was at a meeting every night. And even on step 5, he was busy doing a prison chair that night. And he sent me out with another one of the guys in the rooms. And I did my step 5 with this guy, Melvin, sitting in an IHOP. Which nobody knows what that is in England, by the way, at IHOP. And this guy's eating, like, stuffing himself with pancakes, and I'm like so nervous having to share my step 4 with him. And then Danny woke me up the next morning at 6 o'clock. He used to wake me up at 6 o'clock, and he said to me, "Did you do your step 5 with Melvin last night?" "Yes." He says, "Right, come on, let's do it again." So I did it twice within 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he pointed out anything that Melvin had missed on my fears or on my resentments or on my harms to others or whatever. Well, not whatever. That was what it was. And then we went through with that. But and to be honest with you, I then got on a plane to go back to London about 10 days later, 12 days later, and the minute I got on the plane, I ordered a double vodka and I drank most of the way home, even after all of that.
Wow. So
I kind of disappeared again in London for another few days. My missus didn't really know what was happening, where I was, and she was in a bit of a state. And anyway, I got home on Saturday morning, the 24th of January, because I had an epiphany in the middle of the night coming off a bender, and I didn't want to use or drink again. It was an amazing epiphany. I was in a hotel in Bucharest in Romania. And I had people in the room and asked them all to leave. I was having a party as usual. And I turned on the television and I just ordered room service. I didn't watch porn. And I've never picked up a drink or had a drug ever since that morning. And I got on a plane back to London. I phoned Danny, says, "Where the hell have you been?" And I said, "It doesn't matter where I've been. I'm here now." And then I went to a meeting every day. And I listened to what you said one night that I liked, and I listened to what Steve would say one night I liked, listen to what Danny or anybody in the rooms that I liked what they were saying. I would take it on like a sponge. And then I would go to another meeting where people didn't know them, and I would come out with all of this jargon, and I sort of faked my way through it. And in 30 days, people thought I'd been around for 20 years.
Yeah.
And they were asking me to do speakers, and I did, and it's what I did. And then I started sponsoring people, and all the usual. I opened a meeting, and I did service, and I still do regular meetings regularly, Mark. I mean, saying this to somebody the other day, or maybe saying it to myself because I talk to myself. But a lot of people, I was with a guy the other day, right? That's right. I was with a guy the other day. We went for dinner after a meeting we went to, and he's 29 years, and he does a meeting in the morning and there's a meeting in the evening. 7 in the morning, 7 in the evening. It's just what he does. He is single and whatever. But it's just what he does, and he lives around the area where he does his meetings, and I don't do that. And I hear people I do a Saturday morning meeting in Los Angeles. I do it from London. It's a Zoom meeting in a friend of mine's house in Los Angeles, and there's only about 15 of us, and about 10 of us on Zoom, 5 of us in his house, and we do this meeting. And my friend goes, he's 4 years in, he goes twice a day, every day, whether it's Zoom or physical. And that's just not my story now. It's not my story now. My story now is that I do 3 meetings a week without fail. I do one for the newcomer, I do one for myself, and I do one just in case.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yeah. And that's what I do. Now, admittedly, when I'm here and I'm on my own, because my wife only joins me for about 2 or 3 weeks, I'm here for 2 months. When I'm here, I'll go to a lot more meetings because, if I've got nothing to do, like tonight, I'm doing my yoga. But if I hadn't been doing my yoga, like the other night, I was at the meeting. I'll be at the meeting tomorrow. I'll go a Saturday morning meeting with the Dixie Club, and Saturday morning breakfast meeting, and then I'll go to the mall. I kind of figure it all in, and I do a lot more meetings here because I love going to meetings. But I don't live in London. I live outside London. So I go up to London twice a week, and I do a Zoom meeting. I mean, without fail, unless I'm doing a speaker, I'll do 3 meetings a week, and I've been doing that for several years now, and that keeps me grounded. And with everything else I do, with regards to still working with sponsees, although I'll work mostly now on emotional sobriety.
Yeah.
So I'll work with people that have been around for a while, but they're struggling because, do you want me to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that has to do with emotional sobriety, I'm all in. And because that's one thing that I hold in my program very high is my emotional sobriety. I've noticed that it's the first thing that will go before I ever pick up a drink or a drug.
So what I say to exactly 100%. What I say to people in that thing is that we come in here broken, and we build up our lives again, for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. The lucky ones, by the way, that stay around, and we'll go to meetings. But if you think about the years before, I mean, you're quite young, but if you think about, in my case, 24 years of using and drugging, using and drinking. Before I even picked up a drink or a drug, even though I wasn't what I thought was an addict, I realize now that I had a lot of other shit going on in my life. I was egotistical. I was full of pride, same sort of thing. I was, it's all about me, very selfish in many occasions, I was definitely had issues with relationships. And, I'm 4 years married, 4 times married, and I'm a normal guy from Glasgow. I'm not any superstar, rock star. I mean, to be married 4 times, as an ordinary person, and seeing other people in between, I had a problem, but I didn't realize it was a problem. Just because I wasn't drinking and drugging didn't mean I didn't have other problems. So for years and years and years and years before I got clean and sober, I built up so many habits and bad habits in my life, very bad habits, which we call in recovery defects of character.
Yes.
Yeah. So these defects of character that are ingrained in us, in my opinion, and it's only my opinion because I'm not in a meeting just now, in my opinion, when people talk about my addiction or my alcoholism is doing press ups when I go to bed at night, you hear people saying that all the time. They're ready to, the addiction or the alcoholism is waiting for you to come back so that they can take control of you. I believe that is what is all our bad habits, our defects of character, and whatever. And unless we're dealing with them on a daily basis, then what will happen is that's when they take over, because all these habits come back again. The habits that we've tried to change from our will to God's will, for our higher power's will, all the defects, God doesn't have these defects, our higher power doesn't have these defects, but we've got them. And the whole idea is in 6 and 7, we're going to start using God's will. So I always say the opposites of, my defects. If I'm full of ego and pride, the opposite of that's humility. So God's got humility. I've got impatience. God's got patience, and all of the opposites of my defects. If I'm angry, God's loving, and we all know about resentment. So we all know about self, and that's not God's will. Yeah. So once we allow life to take us over again, it's going to be automatic that we'll fall into the bad habits, because the bad habits we've had ingrained in us since we were kids. We've picked up these habits all the way through childhood, all the way through school, all the way through high school, all the way through, our jobs and everything else, and relationships. We've picked up all these habits, bad habits, and bad habits are really difficult to get rid of, and they're bad for our life. But good habits, which I think is God's will, or good things that we do on a regular basis, are just what saves our lives, but they're much more difficult for us to achieve. So 6 and 7, which is our emotional sobriety, and it's the two smallest paragraphs, but it's not about that. The best thing that can happen to an alcoholic that's in recovery is when one of his defects of character pops up that day, that moment, and you know how to deal with it. Yeah. When the anger pops up, the impatience pops up, the pride pops in, the impatience pops in, you can do something about it when it comes along if you've been practicing it. Mm-hmm. So I always say that the best thing about getting the bad habits to go and the good habits to be there is by continuously practicing it. Mm-hmm. It's like resentment. I mean, I've been down here for nearly 2 weeks. I don't know if I shared this with you before, but I've been here now for, 6, 8 weeks, 7 weeks or something. It must be, I've got another couple of weeks to go. And I will tell you, it's very easy when you go to a lot of meetings to get resentful. It's very easy to judge people that share something that you think, who the hell is he? Yeah. What's he talking about?
I know, I know what you mean. And then I've caught myself doing that. And then I have to catch myself. I'm like, wait a second. This is a person in recovery. This is, how can I identify and not compare? And
well, of course. And it's not even just in the rooms. It's like, I go to this, place. Listen, I'm semi-retired now. So I go to the Monday to Friday, I go to this sort of beach place down here where I can swim, because I swim for my back. And I sit on the beach, and it's, it's like a club thing. So I see people, and I've got to tell you that if I was like still drinking and using, I could be having arguments every day. And there's been a couple of people that have more than once, Mark, that have like pissed me off. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the great thing is, if anybody's pissed me off, and it could just be somebody standing in line or jumping the queue or anything like that. But the thing that's great about this program, when you've got everything working for you, as best as you can, progress, not perfection, is that if a resentment comes along, you can get rid of it quite easily by sometimes making an immediate amends. Look, I'm really sorry if I've upset you, type of thing. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean just because I pulled a face. But you know what? Because if I don't get rid of that resentment, then it's going to sit with me in the evening, sit with me when I'm going to bed at night. In fact, it could sit with me for days. I'm not going to allow that, because if I allow that, that's that addiction or alcoholism doing the press ups, waiting for me to pull back. I'm not going to allow it to have the space, and I'm not going to allow it to take over my brain, and I'm not going to let it live in my head rent free. So, So that's how. So I mean, I do. And listen, I'm the first person. Somebody told me. I don't know if it was Danny that said this when we were here together. But I've been sharing this for quite a while, and that is that a lot of people in the rooms, and I hear it all around the world, will say the one thing that drives me crazy is when somebody cuts me up when I'm driving to work in the morning. And Danny said to me a long time ago, if you let them in, they won't cut you up.
Yeah. And it's I found that, like, when I used to have a problem with road rage, just kind of getting amped up at these other drivers, I called my sponsor and I talked to him about it, and he simply said he told me, he's like, just say thank you, God. And and I've been practicing that for over a year now, and it works. It works. I've noticed
it definitely works.
Has gone down.
Yeah, and by the way, it's worse over here. I don't know whether it's just the state of Florida, but in Miami, people don't let you in.
No,
people don't let you in. I mean, they don't. When I signal, I go very slowly because maybe the light's different. I didn't expect it to be a filter to the left or to the right, and they don't let you in. They come in, and it's very easy for me to go, what, love? Why don't you let me in, you mean people? But I don't. I just go, you know what? They've got their own shit to deal with and whatever. But when I was in early recovery, I used to realize that it was much easier to pray for them if somebody was cutting you up when I used to go into work in London, into downtown, because the traffic is horrendous. But it's not like that today. But you you do hear in meetings a lot when somebody cuts me up, certainly in the UK, because it's a huge city. So in London, so whatever.
Absolutely. And what you're talking about letting resentment fester, I've read that in the big book, that resentment is the number one offender. And I absolutely agree with that, because I noticed that the one thing that I'll have a tendency to get drunk on before anything else is anger and pride and ego and pity. And I have to continually work at it. And work on those defects of character. And when I did my 6 and 7, I thought it was a one and done deal. And I was sadly mistaken when I did that. I have to put in the work.
Actually, no. Yes, I know what you mean by sadly mistaken. And that's the trouble. A lot of people will think it's too powerful. So, and I'm going to hand it all over to God. No, it doesn't work like that. But a lot of people think it does, and then they wonder why they're in this state later on, But it's like learning a new language. I speak a little bit of Spanish. I could do with being able to have conversational Spanish, but I certainly know some good phrases that I do. But I will tell you, it's like learning a new language, and you don't learn a new language. It's like the big book. You don't go to How It Works, chapter 5, right away. You read it from the very beginning. Yep. You read the forwards, because you see forward 1, 2, 3, and 4, how things in the world have changed. And since the fourth forward, it has changed 20 times since then. Millions and millions and millions and millions and millions. But and all these other fellowships that all work through the Blue Book. And then you read the doctor's opinion. And then you read about, Bill's story. You start at the beginning. If you don't start at the beginning, you're going to miss a lot of good stuff. You're going to miss a lot of, more about alcoholism and all of these good stuff. And then you get to step 5, when you start learning your verbs and start learning how to communicate more. And there's a reason why they didn't open the book and put it at How It Works. This is how it works. So people just go in, they built you up to it. And then of course, the recovery's in the first 164 pages. But in saying that, the great thing is we understand about resentments. I mean, the words are amazing in that book. And we understand about resentments. And resentments are the killer.
They are.
Resentments are the killer, and they can absolutely throw somebody's emotional sobriety out the window. Mm-hmm. Out the window, and will be an example of your addiction or your alcoholism, doing press-ups, doing press-ups all night long while you're sleeping, because they're waiting for you to wake up in the morning and still be full of that resentment. And the more resentment you have, and the more you build up on these resentments again, and you get into all your bad habits and all your defects of character, there'll be a lot of pain there, and you can go out and have a drink.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, I 100% agree with that. And so in how it works, it says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. How has your life changed for you after you completely gave yourself to this simple program?
Well, it's not about gave myself to the simple program. I'm still in that simple program. And I try to keep it simple, I really do. I was sitting in the room, down in where we went a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you mentioned names, if you're allowed to mention names, but when I was sitting in the room a couple of weeks, Tuesday night, I was looking around and they have lots of these sayings, but and I get them all, and they're all good sayings, but keep coming back has saved my life. So I keep it that simple. I keep it in the day. But I've got some very, 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 I never go to bed at night, on an argument with my wife. I never do. And there's sometimes when I can open my big mouth and say the wrong thing, because it could be about family, it could be about something. And my wife and I are in business together. So, we've got even more reason to have discussions, but I never get into arguments with her. But when I do, or when she, goes up to bed, and I've got to make it up, so hopefully I try to only put my foot in that between 6 and 7, funnily enough, because anything after that, it's just too late for even to make it up. It's pointless having an argument whether it's 10 o'clock at night. I've got no chance, because she takes 2 hours to let me into the room, Yeah. So, but it's very important that you don't go to bed in an argument. So I keep it simple. I keep it in the day.
Good.
And I keep trying to practice these principles in all my affairs. I really do, Mark. I do believe that, and I think this, that there's a lot of misunderstood facts, about the way sponsorship can be done. Although I've heard some amazing shares today, this week. There's been I heard an amazing chair last Saturday, a week ago on Saturday, when I went to your place in Dixie, West Dixie. Yep. There's an amazing recovery down here. There's some amazing recoveries all over the world. But I will tell you, having a higher power in my life is very, very important to me. In fact, I've got 2 higher powers. I've got my higher power, and then I've got my wife. And I don't say that even jokingly, because she's much more, she understands things a lot better than me, and I can still be it's all about me. They're always taking the mickey, my family, about me. But Dad, it's all about you. And listen, I travel, I can get angry at the airlines if I'm not in the right seat. I can get angry in a restaurant if I'm not in the right table, which is so bad. So even at 20 odd years clean and sober, coming at 19 years, I'm just, even when I have a bad day where I go here, I'll just go, I'm really grateful still to be here. I mean, I can but I try to be kind. So I keep it, as you started off this, I try to be kind. Absolutely. I think I said it on the last thing. I think the three most important things are to be kind. That's number one. The second most important thing is to be kind. And the third most important thing is to be kind. And that all comes from being grateful. Grateful brings happiness. Because gratitude and happiness are the same brother and sister, or cousins, whatever you want to say. Mm-hmm. And they're best friends anyway. But if you've got gratitude, you will be happy. Yeah. Because you just for the simple things. And the resentment thing, sometimes it can be as simple as, I know that when we did the steps and when we work with sponsees and we work with our sponsor and we look at the part we played in it, yeah?
Absolutely.
which sometimes isn't necessarily the reason for the resentment. But if you just keep it simple like this, if you look at the part we played in it, and sometimes the part we played in it is just being physically in that room, or physically, sitting at that table, or been in that car. Sometimes, it can just be the fact that you were in it, and, maybe you'll go, maybe I shouldn't have been there. Maybe I shouldn't have made that remark, whatever. So, but it just keep it simple. This is actually not a complicated program. It's actually a very simple program with clear-cut directions. And if we don't try to rework it as people do, that, whatever. I do find over in America, you can go into a very it can slightly go a little bit more God, because God is obviously mentioned more times than anything else. But, I always believe that's a God of my understanding. But, there can be parts of the States where it can be a little bit more, religious-y sort of thing, or at least that can come across from people. But again, that's, whatever gets you through. For me, my higher power is a God of my understanding, and it hasn't really changed very much. But yeah, and you know what? During my 20 years, I've had Susanna, my wife, and I have had some very challenging times. We lived through the recession. We lost all our money again in a property deal that we did, and we came back to London from Spain, really with our tail between our legs. But I was going to meetings. She was incredibly supportive, and we built ourselves up again, because we, nothing changes. And so it's not just you work the program in your normal life, not just in your, where you were before. That's the best 12 principles you can, honesty and all of these principles in all our affairs works. More people should do it.
Yeah. And
especially some of your politicians, And I don't mean the ones that drink. No, I'm joking. Our politicians are just bad.
Hey, yeah, that's I believe the world would be. I don't know. I like the 12 steps, and they've been very good in my life. And sometimes I wish people would put them into their lives, but you know what? That's not up to me. That's what I've learned.
But Mark, I didn't know you before, but I met you last year, exactly a year ago. At the Dixie Club. And I've got to tell you, you've been you and I have kept in touch. We made arrangements here and we kept to those arrangements. You asked me last week, would I do the podcast? And I said, when my wife goes back, because I was giving her some time hanging out with her that week after Danny had gone. And I said, I'll do it. And the minute she'd gone, I think Monday I reached out to you. But it's what we do. We've got principle. We don't say something that we don't mean. And you do meet a lot of people that still have got a lot of bad habits and whatever, but that's okay, because that's their stuff. So, when I go tomorrow night, I talk about resentment. Okay. So I could get resentments from some people at some of the meetings I go to. I've mentioned that because, I can see people going off doing fellowship, they'll be very nice to me, but nobody's ever really asked me to go and join them for a coffee. And I see people walking off and then I don't hold a resentment. I just think, well, are they authentic? Are they not authentic? That's their stuff and whatever. And then all of a sudden people started saying, would you like to come for something to eat? I'm going for a pizza tomorrow night, because I think that's important.
It is.
But I don't get myself all twisted about it. And if I do feel a little bit of resentment, I told you, I do just deal with it, and I don't let it, I don't sit on it, because, so that's it. So there you go. What else you want to know?
Well, that's about it. I believe you said you had to go at 5:30, and that's the time that I'm
looking at.
I've
got to go and get ready for my yoga, and I'll personally, between you and I'll let you know how I get on. But the meditation is important. It really is. I pray in the morning. I do my praying in the shower. And it's just what I do. Yeah. It's just what I do. It's just what I do. I never pray for myself. I just pray to have good direction. But I will also tell you that the meditation is important, because just to have that space, and also in the day, I'll give you one last little thing here. And that is that Somebody told me this a long time ago, and I've done it. But over the years, when I've had difficult days, or even something that's happened in a meeting or business, or even with a friend, I'll just excuse myself and say I'm going to the bathroom. And sometimes I sit in the toilet, and I'll just sit on the top of the toilet, and I'll just, pray, and I'll just try and bring myself back and calm, and then go out, a reset, and go out and start again. Because that completely gets rid of the resentment. Because look, at the end of the day, we're human. We've got emotions. We're alcoholics. We're all quite emotional anyway, and because we've been going pull me for so many years, and it doesn't have to be like that. And there you go. But having you as a friend in my life, Mark, is really lovely. I don't, and I think that, please God, over the years, you and I will remain pals, and you know that. And it was very nice meeting. I'm not going to mention names on the podcast, but your lovely friend that you brought round to my house, the girl that does the coffee.
Yeah. the drop the coffee barista. Yes.
Yes. The coffee barista.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that's. Well, hey, look, she's happy to come up and spill coffee at your place anytime. So,
and when I'm here next year, you're more than welcome. Actually, next year there's quite a lot of my family coming over, so it'd be nice if you maybe meet them. My granddaughter's coming, my daughter's coming. Funnily enough, my ex-wife is coming, who's a very close friend of ours. She's part of our family. So in fact, she's not meant to be called my ex-wife anymore. She's one of my closest friends. So that's what recovery's brought me.
That is. And recovery has brought me a lot of good friends in this program due to the fellowship. And Paul, I am happy to call you my friend, and I'm happy that we've had this time to sit down and talk, and to just know somebody from across the pond that comes here regularly, that I stay in touch with. And I'm so grateful for you, and thank you so much for your time today.
Anytime you want, Mark. God bless you. And you speak to me. Let's speak before I go back home on the 26th, after Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. And before we go, you know what else I'm grateful for?
What?
The recovery band taking us out. Kick it, boys. They know one song, and they're gonna hit it for you again. Kick it.
Let's go.
Yeah. Maybe they'll learn a new one someday.
God bless you.
God bless you too, Paul. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Lots of love. Bye-bye. Bye.